guys, I'm Dylan from Unknown Reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you've been here for a while, welcome back. And today I'm going to be talking about the new Mike album, Beware of the Monkey. I was really looking forward to covering this album because for whatever reason in 2022, Mike just hit for me. I don't know what happened, but for whatever reason, like, he was always a rapper that I just couldn't really connect with before, but pretty much everything he's dropped, all the singles, the EP with The Alchemist and Wiki, everything that he's dropped, it finally clicked and made sense for me. There's been a lot of people in my comments recommending him, like really vouching for him, saying like, you know, he's really one of the best out there. So I was excited to challenge myself to really see what was so special about him, because I knew there was something there. I'm like, there's a reason why people will go to bat for this guy. And I'm happy to say that with this album, I completely get the hype now. Like, Mike really is that good. So I think this album is a really important one. And I use that word important specifically because it's like, do I think this is the best album of the year? No. Do I think this is like top 5? Probably not. And like, I don't even know if it's top 10. It might be right on the outside. But I also think that those rating systems and those, you know, like metrics are arbitrary. And I feel like at times they can distract us away from the impact and the importance of what these artists are talking about on these projects. Do I still have some of the same gripes that I've had with other Mike projects or tracks that I've heard when it comes to some of the murky production and delivery, different things like that? Yes, I do. But to me, those technical gripes aren't as important as what he's doing for hundreds of thousands of people across the world. It's really kind of rare because obviously you have like introspective rap all over the place, but a lot of times there's like a story being told or these really flashy rhymes and it's really kind of like technically proficient, and you know, at times it's just kind of like super flashy, right? Which is obviously great, but that can kind of, again, distract away from the emotional core at times because you can get so wrapped up in like the pyrotechnics of it all. With Mike, it feels so raw. It feels like the things that he's talking about, it's like, I went through that too. And I kind of verbalized it and processed it kind of sort of in the same way, right? Like on the first track of the album, he says, "Through the city, I can't do too much of looking up." Like, that's just such a simple phrase, but it's so relatable, I think, especially as young people in this generation, and Mike is one of them. He's only 24, right? Hope itself can be overwhelming because there's so many different possibilities and you don't know which ones are going to go right. You don't know which ones are going to go wrong. There's just so much in that one line. It's really simple and it's really powerful. And on this first track, Nothing I Can Do Is Wrong, which is like been one of my favorite tracks all year. I think it's incredible. I think the production is just like, the sample's perfect, right? I love this track. From the lyrical standpoint, right after that first line where he says, "I can't do too much of looking up," he says, "My sister hit me, trying to push me, say I'm good enough," right? There's nothing flashy about that. Just saying something is the best way to say something. It doesn't always have to be this clever wordplay, double entendre, all these different things. Just say what you mean. And I think any aspiring artists who are really into Mike, when they're formulating their verses, maybe just think about saying whatever it is you want to say without trying to make it, you know, super lyrical, spiritual miracle, you know, that whole thing. He's really kind of just rapping about life. You know, it's not this big, intricate labyrinth of themes. It's just like stuff going on, life happening. He has another lyric that starts out, one of the tracks on this album, where he's just like, "You know how life is, it's just ups and downs." And even though that's really simplistic, sometimes the best way to really connect with an audience is through simplicity. And I think Mike is like literally one of the best examples of that I've seen in a minute. Another track that I loved, and honestly, this is probably my favorite track, is No Curse Lifted. Like, the beat on this track is so good. It's so bright. I feel like where Mike really kind of shines is on these brighter tracks. Like, As For Me, No Curse Lifted, Nothing I Can Do Is Wrong. One More, which is not on this track. It's on the Alchemist EP that he did with Wiki. This track I just thought was really good. I like that Mike went for like a faster flow, although I think it still needs some work. Like, there were definitely some times where I kind of like could not understand what he was saying. But like I said, to me, technical flaws aren't as important on an album like this because it's just such a different album than that. Like, that's not the main purpose that it's trying to serve. Even though there's a lot of great moments of like production and flows, right, on this album, I don't think it, like, the intention of this is to hit top 10 on like Complex's best albums of the year list. Like, sure, that would be nice, but I don't think that's what Mike actually cares about. What he does care about, and what's so obvious across this album, and I think another reason why it's so emotionally potent, is his family. There's one line on a track, I don't remember what it is, I'll probably get to it later in the review, but he says that he's on stage with his mom every night, and their bond is getting closer every time he's on stage. Like, that is just, like, I can feel it. It's just like, it's heart-wrenching stuff, but it's beautiful. On the last track, there's a vocal snippet of his mom praying for him and his whole family, and it seemed like she believed very heavily in God, but Mike is kind of struggling with that. Like, on one line, he says, I haven't been talking to God much. And it's like, most of us have been there. At one point or another, most of us have wrestled with, a God, does a God exist? Do I believe in it? All those kinds of things. And I think those thoughts really kind of percolate, especially when someone close to you passes away. And so it's just like, there's just so many, like, just real life things going on in this album. I really kind of view it almost kind of like a slice of life album, one that's done really, really well and is still consistently engaging, even if it's not focusing on like one specific concept all the way through. And it makes for some really profound and relatable moments. Like on Concrete, he says, it be peaks and declines, you know how life get, grinding for your piece of the pie as long as time stretch. Do I keep it a vibe? I ain't decide yet. But that's really how it is. Like, sometimes it's just like, do I really feel like getting upset about this thing, or am I just gonna like, just say I don't care right now? Or just not address the issue, or just push it off to another day. I appreciate him putting that in there, because I feel like we've all been there before. He has another line on Swoosh 23, which like, that beat is absolutely insane. Like, can I talk about that for a second? Like, that is just absolutely, I love that beat so much. It's probably one of my favorite beats of the year. He has this really interesting set of lines where he says, I got booming and bought me a vet, but the booze is what brought me to bed. And that is just like, again, the way he just conveys what he's trying to say. It's so simple, but it's so effective at the same time. He didn't go on a whole diatribe about how money can't buy you happiness, and he was trying to cover it up with the pain and blah, 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 blah. He just says, like, I bought me a Corvette, but I still can't stop drinking. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Okay, so I'm just editing this for context because somewhere along the line, a little bit of footage got cut out somehow. I don't know where it went, but the upcoming footage, I'm talking about Tapestry. That's the song that I'm talking about, just so you're not confused. Okay, bye. There's so many opening lines on this track that are done so well. He says, don't want the wrath, want a mask and a black hoodie. It's not an act, you know I'm back with a sad boogie. And I think that's such an interesting line, because to me, it almost kind of painted the picture of like him declaring, who he is as a rapper. And he's like, I'm not out here for the bravado. I'm not here to talk about how I'm better than someone else, or how I'm gonna go shoot up someone else, or, how many women I get. He's just like, I'm here because I'm sad and I need to process these things. And I'm like, me too. Like, that's really how it is. For me, I just personally relate to like a lot of the different things that he's talking about on this album when it just comes to like just existing and being. But to me, it was also a really interesting window into his artistic process. At least that's how I perceived the line. But Tapestry is another track that is just absolutely incredible. There's not many features on this album, which I do think, honestly, is a little bit of a weakness to it, but when the features are there, they're really good. Like Jadacee's verse off of Light. He has like some really interesting lines here, like one where he's talking about the ground being heavy with demise and the earth not being clean, and talking about what his ancestors left behind to him and how they bled for him and how every step that he takes, he kind of continues on their legacy. I just thought that was just a really just beautiful sentiment to portray. And I just wanted to shout that out. There's a couple of other lines that really struck me. Like when Mike says on Eczema, bearer of the grief, I got angels trying to replace it. Merrier it be, more I prepare for the glee tainted. I thought that was a really cool set of lines. And like all over this album, there's these themes of angels looking after him, God looking after him, his family looking after him, praying over him, all these different things. But him not always feeling like he has the strength himself to kind of carry forward the things that they want for him. And I think the way he portrayed those themes, family and faith and depression and addiction, all these different things, he does them with such grace and such honesty, but also with such effectiveness in the way that he just kind of plainly states what's going on, but still, you know, throws in a few like clever lines here and there. Again, I just think that it's just a really important slice of life rap album, if you can kind of like, you know, consider that a genre. I really think that's what this album is, and I think that it's a refreshing change of pace from just like so many other albums that are out there. Sometimes it's nice to just take a step back and just listen to a guy rap about life, you know, because it just comes from a very grounded, easy to wrap your head around, you know, emotional space. But it has all those things while being incredibly deep and thoughtful. And I just appreciate this album for that. And I do want to say, like, Mike did have some really great performances on here. Like, I loved his performance on Nothing I Can Do Is Wrong and Tapestry, Swoosh 23. And, like, oh my gosh, I literally forgot to mention 2 tracks that I love. Like, I literally love these 2 tracks, Apari Park and What Do I Do. They're so interesting. Like, the vocals on Apari Park were just so good. And I just really loved that soul influence. And it's funny because it reminded me of a poll that I did earlier, like I think like 2 weeks ago, where I asked what would be like a really interesting rapper collab, and one of the options was Mike and Solange. And Apari Park just reminded me of something that would be on a Solange album, or a track like that would be on a Solange album. I'm like, I really need these 2 to work together. But I loved that track. And What Do I Do? It was just such an interesting choice production-wise. Like, it was so low-key, but it literally was almost kind of like a slowed in reverb track, right? Because whatever sample he used, or whatever sample the producer used, was definitely slowed in reverb. Like, there's no other way around it. At least that's just really how it sounds. And I think it's pretty impressive that Mike is able to write it and still keep it interesting and engaging, even though like that track goes at like a snail's pace, but it's like really peaceful and really calming. And I love that track. But yeah, I really do feel like there's a little something for everyone all over this album. And I think what Mike is doing is so important because, like, you know, in 2022, even though this is still changing, a lot of times it is still pretty hard for guys to, like, you know, talk about their emotions, and specifically about things like mental health and depression and like all that kind of stuff. So to have a rapper that is really talking about these things effectively and, you know, in an interesting way with music that also sounds great, it just makes me really appreciate this pocket of hip hop that guys like Mike are in. And I think it's really one of the most important musical movements out right now. And I think this album is just another great addition to what's going on in that sector of hip hop. And I'm really glad that he's starting to get some more recognition, because he definitely deserves it. I can definitely see the hype now, and I just can't wait to see what else he does. And also, I gotta mention it again, the track that he had with Wiki on that Alchemist EP, incredible, literally incredible. There's just something magical about that track. I don't know how else to say it. But those are my thoughts on the album. I really enjoyed spending time with this thing and really kind of just hearing what Mike had to say. And I'm just really happy that I gave him another shot, that I listened to you guys. And if there are any other rappers that I'm like 100% sleeping on, please tell me, because I don't want to be sleeping on any rapper, because I don't want to miss out on good art. So definitely let me know in the comments below if there's someone that I need to check out, that you'd like me to cover, different things like that. Let me know what you thought about this album, other things that you might have noticed about it, maybe things that I missed. You know, there's so much to talk about this album. Like, there's a couple tracks I didn't even mention. It's not that I necessarily didn't like them. It's just, there's so much to talk about, right? So keep the conversation going on in the comments below. I try to respond to as many of them as I can, because I just really enjoy talking with you guys. And yeah, if you like this video, if you want to see more content like this, talking about rap and art and all different kinds of things like that, subscribe, because I got a lot of stuff coming out. I'm going to be branching more into like TV and different things like that. So if any of that interests you, if you're a writer and any of that kind of interests you, definitely subscribe, because that's pretty much all this channel is going to be about, is writing and art and all that kind of good stuff. And yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you for watching. I'm Dylan from Unknown Reviews, and I will see you next time. Bye.